IVM.
News Kids on the Block. We bring to you stories that top the nation's papers, fresh from the IVM and Ascend International School Desk. Hi, I'm Kavya.
And I'm Anya, and welcome back to this episode of News Kids on the Block. Trivik is stuck in traffic right now, so you'll be dealing with just the two of us today. But we know that we're the favorites anyways, right?
Yeah, for sure.
We're going to talk about football, and we're like fun.
Yeah, so you can look forward to hearing no football stories today. But I think it's great that we're back to school and we are facing these kind of problems. But anyways, let's get started. So the first story I have for you today is something that I found really interesting because we all know that waste is such a big issue in this world. And currently more than 2 billion tons of waste is produced every year. And while this isn't a very big part of that, cigarette butts contribute to quite more than you would think. So just in India itself, over 26,000 tons of waste is from cigarette butts. A Swedish company called Corvid Cleaning has figured out a way through a reward system to train wild crows to pick up cigarette butts from the road, which I thought is really cool. So these wild crows are trained using a machine that dispenses food if a cigarette butt is put into the machine. And I think crows are so smart. Like, as annoying as they are, you can literally watch them and just you can watch them for hours just seeing how smart they are and the way they figure out how to do things. So I think it's really interesting because they are so smart and they are so much smarter than we think. So I don't think it's impossible for them to learn to do stuff like this. And I think it's also really cool that we're figuring out these really creative and out of the box ways to reduce waste and come up with creative ways of getting rid of waste. Because right now, I mean, that's the only way to deal with this kind of stuff. So kudos to this company for this really creative idea.
Thanks, Kavya. The next story is a World Cup victory for the Indian men's under-19 team. India has now clinched this title for the 5th time. In their under-19 and they've really had like a lot of struggles. They had a COVID scare, and if you hear the individual stories of these players, you know, they've all really gone through a lot. They got England all out in 44.5 overs and England put up a total of 189 runs. India, on the other hand, began batting and they finished it off with a 6 and won by 4 wickets. And I think overall, Crickbuzz says that that this particular World Cup saw the most runs by an individual in a single edition, where Devil Brevis made 506 runs. There's also the most sixes hit in a single edition, 338. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about around this time last year with Gabba, about just how the young blood has come into the game and people are so much more fearless while playing. So yeah, India have won. The captain Yash Dhal walked up to collect the trophy from Sir Richie Richardson. And previously, some of the other 4 captains who have won it have been Mohammad Kaif, then Virat Kohli, then Unmukt Chand, and most recently Prithvi Shaw. So it was really a very proud moment for India. And we'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
सफर, रास्ते, मंजिल और मुकाम अक्सर ये हमसे कुछ कहना चाहते हैं, पर हम हैं कि अपनी रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी में इन्हें सुनने से कतराते हैं। नमस्ते दोस्तों, मेरा नाम है केशव चतुर्वेदी और मैं आपको ले चलूंगा कुछ ऐसे सफर पर जहां आपको एक नया नजरिया मिलेगा सफर और मंजिलों को देखने का। आइए इन किस्से कहानियों में डूब जाएं, हर मंगलवार और शुक्रवार।
Welcome back. You're listening to News Kids on the Block. And the next story I have for you today is about the International Space Station. So it will continue its operations until 2030, but NASA has now confirmed that it will be headed into a watery grave at a point in the Pacific Ocean sometime in 2030 or after. So it was launched in 1998 and it's been more than 30 years since then. And in the January of 2031, according to the space agency's budget estimates, the space station will come out of the orbit and then will make a very dramatic descent into Point Nemo in the Pacific Ocean, which is about 2,700 kilometers anywhere from land. That place has also been known as the Space Cemetery, like a final resting place for space stations that are no longer in use. This region is pretty much free of any human activity. And NASA says it's pretty much the furthest place from any human civilization you can find. NASA said that it plans to continue future space research by buying time and space for astronauts, scientists on commercial spacecraft, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do next.
The next story that we have for you is also a cricket story. I have no idea why, but this one was actually, I was really amused by it. Basically, they started selling tickets for the World Cup match in Australia later this year, and they sold the ticket, and one of the fixtures is India versus Pakistan. The tickets for the match got sold out in less than 1 minute. Just imagine, an entire stadium was basically like fully sold out for an India-Pakistan match in a minute. Like, just think about how fast you had to like click the button, pay the money, get the OTP, put the OTP in, and then maybe get your ticket. Like, it seems like a very high stress, high stakes scenario.
That is mad.
But yeah, I just thought it was really amusing and an interesting piece of news going into the World Cup, and even honestly, a lot of political events around us. Right now, the Indian men's team is playing West Indies in India, and the women's team is actually playing in New Zealand before they face off for the Cricket World Cup, the ODI One Day International 50 Over World Cup, which will be coming up in the next month.
Yeah, and I also think India is out for vengeance after the last loss to Pakistan. I'm looking forward to that as well. And for all of those who are interested, by the time this episode will be out, it'll be just one day before the mega IPL awaited auction.
Yeah, they also, in case you missed it, I think last week Kavya talked about the Lucknow team, but the Ahmedabad team has also announced their name. They are the Gujarat Titans. As you know, they're led by Hardik Pandya, and some of the other players include Shubman Gill and Afghanistan's Rashid Khan. So, like you said, mega auction.
Yes. So, with that, we take a short break and we'll be right back on News Kids on the Block.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cyrus Says, film producer Siddharth Roy Kapoor joins Cyrus to talk about his latest web series, Rocket Boys. On Shunyavan, Sheila Aditya and I meet Aditya Sharma. He's the co-founder at The Soul Store. We talk to him about how the popular brand came to be and what their journey has been like. On a show about crypto, Rohan talks to Rahul Sanghi, co-founder at Tiger Feathers. They explore Web 3.0 and its advantages and disadvantages. On Postcards from Nowhere, Utsav weaves a fascinating story that connects Gujaratis, Uganda, and the last king of Scotland. And on Hans Fani, we hear the story Bhoot Ka Kalakar. It explores the conflict between art and its artists. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Also, please do tell a friend. It really does help us when you spread the word about our podcast. And I'd also like to ask you if you could rate or recommend wherever you listen to our podcast. And speaking of where you listen to this show, if you're on an Android phone, do check out our new Android app. We have a brand new app with a brand new listening experience. Definitely check it out. I think you will enjoy it. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Bank of Baroda and CoinSwitch Kuber. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back to News Kids on the Block. I'm your co-host for today, Kavya, and I'll take us into the next story, which is something that is definitely interesting to say the least. The Madhya Pradesh government is considering the introduction of a happiness subject in school as a part of the syllabus of its high school and higher secondary school classes from the next academic season. Books are already being drafted and the preparation is on its way. But something that I thought was really an interesting question to think about is whether happiness is something that can be taught or can be learned by someone. Because it's obviously an abstract idea, and it's not like it's like something like math or science where you learn about it. So I thought I'm very curious to see as to how this goes and how this ends up unraveling. And I want to know what's going to be a part of this.
I think part of even that, what I like as interesting as it is that happiness would be a subject in school, because happiness is not something that can really be taught.
Exactly.
I do think that as a pro, they're looking at it from a perspective of like happiness or being happy is something important in our lives. And so I think a lot of it comes from like a mental health perspective, which is really great to see coming from not even the central government, but a state government and at a level of schools. So I think in that context, it's really nice.
And like you said, we're seeing a lot more people in this day and age that aren't very happy, and depression is becoming a lot more prominent in today's world. So I think the fact that they're giving this importance to happiness and the whole idea of being happy is really cool to see.
Yeah, for sure. With that, we'll go into the next story. The next story that we have for you today is some very unfortunate news where on the 8th of February 2022, Lata Mangeshkar passed away. She was known as the Nightingale of India. And before we talk about her legacy, she passed away she was battling COVID and other related illnesses, and she was in and out of the hospital. Lata Mangeshkar, like I said, she's known as the Nightingale of India. I think for so many people and across so many generations, her voice is this very, very familiar sound. She's battled Mohammad Rafi for world records on the most songs sung in a language. And I think that's what makes her so unique. As a person, as a legacy, she's left behind all of these songs. Some of my fondest childhood memories, even though she's, she hasn't really sung any songs that my generation listens to per se. But so many of my fondest memories as a child are sitting in my grandfather's room and he's playing like solitaire on his computer. And there's like some Lata Mangeshkar song playing, and I would like take my nani's dupattas and like dress up as like Meena Kumari or Madhubala, whoever was there, and dance around, and that was it. And to me, those songs are like more of any childhood song than any other song that I can listen to. And they're more of a comfort to me than any other song. And I think that just speaks volumes for the legacy she's left, because she started acting when she was like 13 or 14 because her father passed away and she had to basically be the breadwinner of the family. And just that, and she created this legacy of music that we listen to today. And she was very much the voice of India. A lot of states, the government declared a 2-day mourning, and the flag was flown at half-mast for 2 days as well. Maharashtra made it a public holiday. And while there was some controversy on that, I think that all of that aside, it just goes to show her existence impacted India so much that the government had actually said, like, we hear of all of these things like, oh, this Jayanti, that Jayanti, but like these people seem like just one page in a history textbook. This is someone who, I think for me, like I've lived and breathed the same air as her at the same time, and she's personally impacted my life in a way. So to see like a public holiday given in her name, that just goes to show the magnitude of what she's achieved as a person.
I completely agree with you, Anya. And I can't say I was ever like an avid listener, but my parents have always listened to her. My grandparents have always listened to her. So I know most of her songs, and they've just always been playing in the background somewhere. And I thought, in tribute to someone so great who's left behind such a great legacy, it would be interesting to kind of give like a bit of a song recommendation, Lata Mangeshkar edition, with some of our favorite songs that she has sung. Anya, you want to start?
Yeah, so I think there are so many songs. So I'll give like a couple. My all-time favorite song, like no matter what, is Chalte Chalte from the movie Pakiza. Kavya is like mouthing the song. But the one song that that makes me honestly just cry every time I listen to it. Again, like I said, she has sung over 30,000 songs. So it is a little bit difficult to choose like one or two. And this is a no. But there is this one song which I really, really like. It's from a movie called Dil Ek Mandir with Meena Kumari and Rajkumar. And the song is called Hum Tere Pyar Mein. And it's got a sitar in the beginning and it's based in Rag Des. And it's one of my absolute favorite songs. Like that song is just calmness and like just solitude and everything. And it's my absolute, it just, I don't know, something, that song just takes me to another world. So I think that's the song for me. But again, there are so many other songs like Tum Na Jaane Kis Jahan Mein, Hazraton Ke Daag. Literally, I can sit and name Lata Mangeshkar songs for a really long time, and Kavya is giving me a look. So Kavya, why don't you go ahead?
These two are probably the ones that my parents listen to the most. So subconsciously, they've always just been ebbed in my mind as well. But my two favorites are probably Ajeeb Daastaan Hai Ye, as well as Lag Ja Gale Se Fir. Two very different songs, but yeah, and like I said, those have kind of been tattooed in the back of my mind. And yeah, her legacy, like I said, will always live on, no matter where she is. And with that, we'll end this episode. That's all we have for you today. We hope you enjoyed this episode of New Skids on the Block.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other podcasts on the IVM network.
You can follow us at IVM Podcasts on both Instagram and Twitter. And we will catch you guys next week.
Until then, be sure to stay safe, drink water, and don't forget to do your homework.
Are you looking for finance products and services that can enhance your personal finance experience? Are you looking for a space to talk about your financial product or service? And are you looking for a crisp talk show where the conversation is all about money? Well, your search ends here. Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta and I'm host of the Paisa Paisa podcast, and I invite you for the conversation about your personal finance on each Monday on the IVM Podcast app or the website or on any podcast streaming platforms. See you folks.
Have you ever wondered where the business world is headed? How the ways in which we create, market and sell to consumers will evolve? Or if we'll ever go back to wearing pants while working? For answers to all of this and more, tune into Advertising is Dead with me, Varun Dugirala. Every Tuesday, as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders and change makers from across business, media, marketing and beyond. You can catch all episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IVM Podcasts website, app or wherever you get your podcasts from.